I was sitting in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, mascara streaking down my face, when I saw him on my phone screen, the man who had shattered my heart just 3 months ago, now standing on national television with a microphone in his hand and my name on his lips, the same lips that had coldly told me we were done, that he needed space, that I wasn't part of his future anymore. And now, impossibly, he was down on one knee in front of millions of viewers, holding a ring that caught the studio lights like a constellation of broken promises and desperate hope. My roommate Jessica burst through my bedroom door, her eyes wide with shock, her own phone thrust toward me as if I needed confirmation that this was actually happening. But I couldn't look away from my screen, couldn't process the reality that Marcus Reed, my Marcus, the man I had loved with every fiber of my being, was publicly declaring his love for me on The Tonight Show while I sat alone in sweatpants, surrounded by empty ice cream containers and the ruins of what I thought was a closed chapter of my life. If you believe in second chances, if you believe that love can break through even the deepest pain, please hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Because this story, my story, is about to take you on a journey you won't forget. 3 months earlier, everything had been different. Marcus and I had been together for 4 years, ever since we met at a coffee shop in Manhattan, where I was working on my novel and he was sketching designs for what would eventually become his breakthrough clothing line. He was a dreamer with calloused hands and eyes that saw beauty in everything, especially in me, or so I had believed. We built a life together in the chaos of New York City. Late nights in his cramped studio apartment, early mornings watching the sunrise from the Brooklyn Bridge, countless conversations about the future we would build together. He would design clothes that made people feel confident and beautiful, and I would write stories that made people feel less alone. We were partners, best friends, lovers, everything. But success has a way of changing things, of changing people. When Marcus's designs caught the attention of a major fashion house, when his Instagram following exploded from a few hundred to several million, when celebrities started wearing his pieces on red carpets and fashion magazines called him the next big thing, something shifted. The late nights became later, but now he wasn't with me. He was at industry parties, networking events, fashion shows in Paris and Milan and Tokyo. The conversations about our future became shorter, more strained, filled with his exhaustion and my growing insecurity. I watched the man I loved slip away into a world I didn't belong to, a world of flashing cameras and beautiful models and opportunities that seemed to have no room for a struggling writer who still worked at that same coffee shop to pay rent. The breakup happened on a Tuesday evening in September, right after he returned from Fashion Week in Paris. He came to my apartment with that look in his eyes, the one I had been dreading, the one that said he had already made up his mind and nothing I could say would change it. He sat on my worn couch, the same couch where we had spent countless nights watching movies and dreaming together, and he told me that he needed to focus on his career, that the relationship was holding him back, that we wanted different things now. He said it kindly, gently, as if that would make the knife hurt less as it twisted in my chest. He said he cared about me, that I would always be special to him, but that we needed to go our separate ways. And then he left, walking out of my apartment and my life as casually as if he were just going to the store for milk. The weeks that followed were a blur of tears and rage and desperate attempts to understand what had gone wrong. I replayed every conversation, every moment, searching for the signs I had missed, the ways I had failed to be enough. Jessica held me through countless breakdowns, forced me to eat when I forgot, reminded me that I was worthy of love even when I couldn't believe it myself. I deleted his number, blocked him on social media, packed away every photo and gift and memory into a box that I shoved into the back of my closet. I told myself I was moving on, that I was better off without him, that anyone who could leave so easily wasn't worth my tears. But late at night, when the city was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I still reached for my phone to text him about something funny I saw or some random thought I had, only to remember that he was gone. I threw myself into my writing with a ferocity I didn't know I had. The pain became fuel, and the novel I'd been working on for years suddenly poured out of me in raw, honest chapters that laid bare every emotion I was feeling. I wrote about love and loss, about dreams deferred and hearts broken, about a woman who had to find herself again after losing the person she thought completed her. It was cathartic and agonizing and necessary, and for the first time in my life, I started to believe that maybe I could actually finish it, actually become the writer I had always wanted to be. Meanwhile, Marcus's career continued to soar. I couldn't completely avoid news about him. His face was everywhere, on billboards and magazine covers, and entertainment news websites. I saw photos of him at glamorous events, always surrounded by beautiful people, always smiling that smile I used to think was reserved just for me. Each image was a fresh wound, a reminder of everything I had lost, everything I apparently hadn't been good enough to keep. My friends stopped mentioning him around me, changing the subject quickly if his name came up, treating my heartbreak like a terminal illness they didn't want to acknowledge. Then came that November evening when Jessica came home from her job at a marketing firm, practically vibrating with excitement about some celebrity interview she had seen promoted for The Tonight Show. She was scrolling through her phone, chattering about her day, when she suddenly went silent. I looked up from my laptop where I was editing a particularly emotional chapter, and the expression on her face made my stomach drop. She turned her phone toward me slowly, and there on the screen was a promotional post for tonight's show, and Marcus was listed as one of the guests. Something in my chest constricted painfully. I told Jessica I wouldn't watch, that I had moved on, that seeing him would just set me back. But we both knew I was lying. When the show started that evening, I was curled up on my bed, laptop open, heart hammering against my ribs as I waited for his segment. He appeared looking impossibly handsome in one of his own designs, a sharp navy suit that fit him perfectly and made his dark skin glow under the studio lights. The host asked him about his recent success, about his upcoming fashion show, about what inspired his designs. Marcus answered with the same passion and eloquence he had always had, talking about how fashion was about making people feel powerful and authentic and beautiful in their own skin. Then the host asked about his personal life, about whether there was someone special who inspired his work. I almost closed the laptop right then, not wanting to hear about whatever model or actress he was probably dating now. But Marcus's expression changed, became softer and more vulnerable than I had seen in months. He said there was someone who had always inspired him, someone he had made the biggest mistake of his life by letting go. My breath caught in my throat as he began to talk about a writer who saw the world with such depth and empathy, who made him want to be better, who had supported his dreams even when she was struggling with her own. He was talking about me, on national television in front of millions of viewers. Marcus Reed was talking about me. The host seemed to sense something bigger was happening, leaning forward with interest as Marcus continued. He talked about how success had made him lose sight of what really mattered, how he had been so focused on his career that he had pushed away the one person who had loved him when he was nobody, who had believed in him before anyone else did. He talked about the regret that had been eating at him for months, about finally realizing that all the fame and success meant nothing without someone to share it with, without the right person to share it with. His voice cracked slightly as he said my name, Emma Chen, as if it were both a prayer and a confession. And then, impossibly, he stood up from the guest chair and asked the host if he could do something. The studio audience went quiet as Marcus walked to the center of the stage and pulled out his phone. He said he knew I was probably watching, that Jessica had helped him coordinate this entire thing without my knowledge, that he was taking the biggest gamble of his life by doing this publicly. He said he understood if I hated him, if I never wanted to see him again, if the bridge between us had been burned beyond repair. But he needed me to know that breaking up with me was the worst decision he had ever made, that not a day had gone by when he didn't think about me, didn't regret walking away from what we had. Then he got down on one knee right there on the stage, pulling out a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. The studio audience gasped collectively as he opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Not ostentatious or flashy, but beautiful in its understated perfection. So completely unlike the showy world he now inhabited, and so completely like something he knew I would love. He looked directly into the camera with those eyes I knew so well, those eyes that were now filled with tears and hope and fear, and he asked me to marry him. He asked if I could forgive him for being an idiot, for almost losing the best thing that ever happened to him, for taking so long to realize that he didn't want a life that didn't include me in it. If this story is touching your heart right now, if you're feeling the weight of this moment, please show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear a story about love finding its way back home. I sat frozen in my bedroom, tears streaming down my face, my phone buzzing incessantly with texts and calls from friends who were watching the same thing I was. Jessica was standing in my doorway, her own face wet with tears, telling me that my phone was about to explode, that Marcus's people were trying to reach me, that the entire internet was losing its mind over what was happening. But I couldn't move, couldn't think, could only stare at the screen where Marcus was still kneeling, still waiting, still hoping. My mind was racing through every emotion simultaneously. Anger at him for putting me in this position so publicly. Joy at hearing that he still loved me. Fear that this was just another way he would eventually break my heart. Hope that maybe, just maybe, people really could change and learn and grow. I thought about the past 3 months, about how I had slowly started to rebuild myself, to find my own strength and identity apart from him. I thought about my nearly finished novel, about the confidence I had gained, about the woman I had become in his absence. I thought about how much I had loved him, how much I had mourned what we lost, and how much I still loved him despite everything. The next part happened in a blur that I would spend years replaying in my mind. I grabbed my jacket and my keys, practically flew down the 4 flights of stairs from my apartment, and hailed a cab with shaking hands. I told the driver the address of the studio in Rockefeller Center and promised him double the fare if he could get me there fast. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Marcus's manager, the show's producers, friends, even my mother, who had somehow already heard about it. But I ignored all of them, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest as we weaved through Manhattan traffic. Drop a comment right now if you think you know what happened next. Did Emma say yes? Did she walk away? Your thoughts matter to me. When I burst through the studio doors 25 minutes later, security initially tried to stop me, but Marcus's manager was there, waiting, and she rushed me through the corridors to the backstage area. The show had ended, but Marcus was still there, sitting alone in his dressing room, head in his hands, looking more defeated than I had ever seen him. When he heard the door open and looked up to see me standing there, disheveled and tear-stained and breathless, the expression on his face was one of pure, unfiltered hope, mixed with terror. We stared at each other for a long moment, and in that silence, I saw everything. The boy who had sketched my portrait on coffee-stained napkins, the man who had held me through my darkest nights, the fool who had almost thrown it all away, and the person brave enough to risk everything to fight for us. I saw his regret and his love and his desperate hope that I could forgive him, that we could find our way back to each other. And I saw my own reflection in his eyes, stronger now, more certain of myself, but still the same person who had loved him through everything. I told him that what he did hurt me more than anything I had ever experienced, that walking away from me when things got hard wasn't okay, that I needed to know he wouldn't do it again the moment his career demanded more of him. I told him that I had spent 3 months rebuilding myself, finding my own worth, and that I wouldn't go back to being someone who existed in his shadow. But I also told him that love was about growth and forgiveness, about choosing each other even when it was difficult, about believing that people could learn from their mistakes and become better versions of themselves. And then, with tears streaming down both our faces, I said yes. Yes to loving him again. Yes to building a future together. Yes to believing in second chances and new beginnings. He slipped the ring on my finger with trembling hands, and we held each other in that dressing room like we were the only two people in the world, making promises to communicate better, to never take each other for granted, to face whatever challenges came our way together instead of apart. The video of his proposal went viral overnight, viewed by millions of people across the country and around the world. Some people criticized him for the public spectacle, for putting that kind of pressure on me, but most people seemed to understand what we both knew, that sometimes love requires grand gestures, that sometimes you have to risk looking foolish to fight for what matters most, that sometimes the heart knows what it needs even when the mind is afraid. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony in Central Park, surrounded by the people who had supported us through our worst times and celebrated us in our best. My novel was published the following year, dedicated to Marcus and to anyone who had ever lost themselves in love and had to find their way back. His fashion line continued to grow, but now he made sure that success included time for us, for the quiet moments and simple joys that made life worth living. Looking back now, I understand that sometimes we have to lose something to truly appreciate its value, that sometimes people need to fall apart to learn how to be better together. The breakup was painful, the most painful experience of my life, but it also taught me about my own strength and resilience. And his proposal, that terrifying, beautiful, impossibly public declaration of love, taught me that sometimes the biggest risks yield the greatest rewards, that vulnerability can be a form of courage, and that real love is worth fighting for, even when you're afraid of getting hurt again. Our story isn't perfect, and neither are we, but we're here together, building a life that honors both our individual dreams and our shared future. And every time I look at the ring on my finger, I remember that night when everything changed, when he broke my heart and then pieced it back together in the most spectacular way possible, proving that sometimes the end of one chapter is just the beginning of something even more beautiful.